My next question, I think I'm just going to say the question and I want all of you to impact on it, all three of you. And if Professor Stephanie wants to come in and if Professor Khadria wants to come in. What do you think are the best policy measures that the governments have taken towards targeting the immigrant population? What are the policy measures that are appreciable and therefore should be emulated by other countries? So speak about your country, and if you think that those measures are something that other people need to follow, then we should get to know about it. So Professor Brij Maharaj, will you go first? Please unmute. Admin. Please unmute Professor Maharaj.
Yeah, I'll start again. Just for the colleagues, I've got a fully written kind of a draft paper. It's in a newspaper called, a digital newspaper called Daily Maverick. It's on Facebook, my Facebook page, and I'll post it on the GRFDT after we conclude. I just want to make a comparative comment. Denison spoke about domestic violence. Now that's a very critical issue because in my country, I say we are the epicenter of domestic violence and abuse of women, especially. And in the first week of lockdown, there were 87,000 reports of domestic violence to the police. Now, I can imagine over 5 weeks what happened. So that's a very serious issue. The issue of human rights violation, I think we got to be sensitive to that because we got the army on the streets, etc. And we're not following, there's a suspension of the normal law and order. And I think certainly in Africa and Asia, when the army comes in, they sometimes forget they got to go back. We've got a history certainly in Africa, at least. And I think we need to emphasize that the human rights of people should not be violated. So across the world, you find that most countries have omitted any reference for support for refugees and undocumented migrants, or what Denison spoke about, the stateless people. And they go into millions. These people form part of the, the proletariat. They're literally right at the bottom of the pile. And I think the only country
Please unmute Professor Maharaj.
One minute. We've got some.
Sir.
It's going on mute, sorry.
No, the only it's country, from his side. I think from his side.
Is it okay now? Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear.
Yeah. So the only country that has dealt with has incorporated support for undocumented migrants and refugees, actually Ireland. They've actually ensured that they are not left out of the state welfare support that's been provided for poor people. So in my country, to get support, you've got to produce your ID. It's called your identity card, or what do you call it in the new name in India? What's it called? The card that you use? Aadhaar card, right? It's almost the equivalent. Now, if you're a refugee or if you got asylum status, you will have some documentation, but most people don't. Take the United States, where Trump has asked these people to leave the country. So where will they go? Especially the Hispanic communities, etc. I know that 50,000 international students had to leave the United States in the middle of March. Some of my students return home. I'm glad they at least they are healthy. But the main, and I was discussing with my students, and some of my students were actually at Columbia, which is just in the heart of Manhattan. And the reason they were sent back is they had no health support systems. It did not exist. But there are ethical issues. For example, there's exploitation in terms of the escalation of prices, where companies have now escalated simple things like face masks. In my country, the price went up 4 or 5 times, and now there's an investigation of that. Anything that's linked to medical support for COVID patients has gone up. And then if you take the United States, where when the equipment was destined for Italy, which was the European epicenter, and suddenly the Americans go in and say they bid a higher price. So ventilators that were going to go to Italy end up in the United States. So, you know, it raises the question of the ethics of business practices and profiting out of a crisis. And yet we're talking about, you know, local solidarity where people are sharing. The NGO, civil society, the faith sectors in South Africa have been very, very effective in responding to the needs of the poor, the people right at the bottom that are not getting much. And from an ethnic view, I can say the Hindu philanthropy communities, the Islamic philanthropic communities, and we make up totally less than 5% of the total South African population. But there's been a huge effort and support from the faith sector in providing assistance for refugees, etc. Thank you.
Dr. Sen, this is Ashok Ramswaran. I can add to that what are the government policies being enacted in the United States. The United States at this time is against new migration and is a complete stop on new migration. And it's understandable because of fear of new infection. And in addition to that, the unemployment factor because there are no jobs available. In fact, we have closed down so many businesses. Although the farm workers and the medical sectors are desperately needed. But at the same time, I can see in the future where brown people and yellow people will be targeted, while Blacks and Hispanics are worstly affected and dying at an extraordinary rate of 2 to 1. There are too many deaths now for any protests against government policies. And that will be handled later, I'm sure. The effects are important on the economic side, but I've heard where many people in our US Congress are looking for a new commission to be set up to analyze, to plan, and to set up new policies for preparedness. So we'll have to wait and see how that affects migration. Thank you.
Can I come in, Nandini, now?
Yes.
Just very brief
I've got to
intervention.
follow up with, sorry, I've got to follow up with Ashok. Is that okay? Sorry, I'm not sure. A quick comment. See, what happened in the US and the UK, they put the economy first. That's a very important point. There's a notion that you can save the economy. And it was, I think in India and South Africa, etc., it was looking at the health implications. And linked to that, both India and South Africa didn't have the capacity. If you're looking at the projections of how many 100,000 people would end up in ventilators, and certainly in South Africa, they did the calculations, there was no way they're going to get. So the idea was they cannot stop the spread. It's actually reducing it. The doctors in South Africa are saying we are buying time. We're trying to break the spread, etc. And like in South Africa, they're saying the peak will be reached in September because we are moving now into winter, where apparently the virus is more dangerous. But this debate about the polarization between lives or business, it's a very interesting ethical debate. Sorry to interject.